At just 7 years old, Princess Charlotte had already mastered the art of royal composure. Her perfect curtsy, graceful wave, and poised smile reflected her upbringing. But on that unforgettable day at the Wellington Arch, something extraordinary happened. As millions watched, the young princess's carefully maintained facade cracked, revealing a moment so genuine it touched hearts worldwide. What could have moved her to tears? The answer lies in a secret gift, a hidden musical tradition, and a great-grandmother's final act of love that would change the monarchy forever. Few people knew that behind the grand doors of Buckingham Palace, in a room rarely seen by visitors, sat an antique Steinway piano that held more secrets than the crown jewels themselves. It was here that Queen Elizabeth II spent countless evenings teaching young Princess Charlotte the delicate art of piano playing, a tradition hidden from public view until that fateful day at the Wellington Arch. The story began when Charlotte discovered a carefully wrapped package on her 7th birthday. Inside lay a delicate musical box, crafted from burnished silver and adorned with tiny horseshoes, a nod to their shared love of horses. But this wasn't just any music box. When opened, it played a haunting melody composed by the Queen herself, a lullaby she had played for Charlotte during their private piano lessons. On the morning of the memorial service, Charlotte wore 2 precious gifts from her great-grandmother, the horseshoe brooch that caught everyone's eye and, hidden beneath her collar, the silver musical box on a delicate chain. What the cameras didn't capture, and what no one could have predicted, was how the Wellington Arch's grand organ would play the first few notes of that very same lullaby, a final gift arranged by the Queen before her passing. As the notes filled the historic hall, something extraordinary happened. Palace insiders later revealed that young Charlotte, who had maintained perfect composure through dozens of public appearances, suddenly recognized the melody. Her hand instinctively reached for the musical box beneath her collar. In that moment, the carefully constructed wall between public duty and private emotion began to crumble. The royal photographer, who captured the first tear falling down Charlotte's cheek, didn't know about the music box, the piano lessons, or the countless hours spent with her great-grandmother learning not just music but life lessons that would shape a future princess. All he knew was that he had witnessed something unprecedented, a moment of pure, unguarded emotion that would change the way the world viewed the royal family forever. But here's where the story took an unexpected turn. As Charlotte's tears caught the attention of millions watching worldwide, something remarkable happened in the orchestra pit. The musician entrusted with playing the Queen's lullaby later shared that his sheet music had mysteriously vanished moments before the performance. Yet somehow, note for note, the melody played on, as if guided by an unseen hand. The Queen's lady-in-waiting would later reveal that Elizabeth had spent months secretly recording herself playing this special piece, knowing it would be her final gift to Charlotte. She had arranged for the recording to be played through the hall speaker system at precisely that moment, ensuring that even after she was gone, she could offer one last moment of comfort to her beloved great-granddaughter. What started as a private display of emotion soon sparked a chain reaction throughout the hall. As Charlotte's tears fell freely, others found themselves moved, not by the loss of a queen, but by the sight of a young girl missing her great-grandmother. Even the typically stoic palace staff were seen discreetly wiping their eyes, though they would never admit it in their official reports. In the days that followed, the story of the mysterious melody began to spread. Music scholars attempted to transcribe it, royal watchers tried to decode its significance, and young royals across Europe found themselves relating to Charlotte in ways they never expected. But the full truth about that day, about the piano lessons and the musical box, remained known only to a select few until now. What no one could have anticipated was how this moment would ripple through centuries of royal protocol, challenging the very foundations of how young royals were expected to behave in public. Within the storied halls of Kensington Palace, young Charlotte navigated 2 distinct worlds that collided in fascinating ways. Behind the scenes, Princess Kate had transformed a forgotten wing of the palace into what the staff affectionately called the Normality Nook, a space where tiaras met teddy bears and royal protocols bowed to childhood whimsy. In this carefully curated sanctuary, Charlotte kept her most treasured possessions, a collection of common toys hidden behind a panel in the wall, each one gifted by members of the public during royal walkabouts. Palace insiders revealed that she particularly cherished a simple wooden dollhouse, placed deliberately next to a priceless 18th-century miniature palace that had belonged to Queen Mary. The contrast between these 2 toys spoke volumes about the unique childhood she lived. The palace staff observed how Charlotte masterfully switched between these two worlds. During state events, she demonstrated impeccable posture, perfected through hours of practice with books balanced on her head, a technique passed down through generations of young royals. Yet moments after the cameras turned away, she would often be found twirling through the palace gardens, her formal shoes kicked off beneath a centuries-old oak tree. Perhaps most intriguing was the discovery of Charlotte's secret ritual. Before every public appearance, her nanny revealed, the young princess spent exactly 7 minutes in the normality nook, playing with her common toys before stepping into her royal role. This personal tradition, she explained, helped her remember that she could be both a princess and a child. As the memorial service approached its most solemn moment, an extraordinary sequence of events unfolded beneath the Wellington Arch, witnessed by an unlikely collection of observers who found themselves part of royal history. The first sign that something unprecedented was about to occur came from Charlotte's personal protection officer, who noticed her fingers tracing the outline of something beneath her collar. Tom Parker, the veteran royal photographer who captured the first heir, recalled how time seemed to slow down in those moments. Through his lens, he observed a subtle change in Charlotte's demeanor, a slight tremor in her usually steady hands and a softening around her eyes that no amount of royal training could mask. Conceal, but what truly broke protocol came next. Standing at his post, Guard James Mitchell made a decision that would later be debated in the highest circles of palace authority. As Charlotte's composure began to waver, he reached into his uniform pocket and silently offered her his own handkerchief. It was the first time in 3 centuries that a guard had directly interacted with a royal during ceremonial duty. Rather than causing a scandal, this simple act of humanity sparked a wave of quiet support through the assembled crowd. The ripple effect moved through the gathering like a gentle tide. Foreign dignitaries, trained in centuries of diplomatic protocol, found themselves caught between tradition and compassion. The Japanese ambassador's wife later described how she instinctively stepped forward to comfort Charlotte, only to be surprised when no one moved to stop her, a subtle but significant shift in the invisible barriers that typically surrounded young royals. In those 3 minutes, as Charlotte's tears fell freely, something remarkable happened to the very atmosphere of the ceremony. The usual whispers of commentary about royal protocol and ceremony transformed into murmurs of empathy and understanding. Young royals from other nations, standing rigid in their formal attire, visibly relaxed their postures in solidarity. The events beneath the Wellington Arch that day did more than just challenge tradition, they rewrote it. In the months that followed, palace insiders witnessed a subtle but significant shift in how young royals were permitted to express themselves during formal occasions. As these changes began to take root within palace walls, attention turned to Prince George, who had watched his sister's moment of vulnerability with an intensity that puzzled many observers. His reaction and the profound impact it would have on their relationship would soon reveal themselves in ways that no one could have anticipated. The question whispered through palace corridors was not if but how this shift in royal dynamics would manifest in the months to come. The change began with a leather-bound journal discovered by the palace housekeeping staff, tucked away in George's private study area. Within its pages, the young prince had documented his own struggles with royal expectations, not through words but through carefully drawn sketches. Each page revealed moments when he, too, had wanted to show emotion but held back. The most memorable drawing showed Charlotte at the memorial service but with a mirror image of himself beside her, tears matching tears. Palace sources revealed that George had been secretly collecting newspaper clippings about his sister's emotional display, not out of rivalry or criticism but with a sense of profound admiration. His private tutor noticed a shift in his demeanor during lessons about royal history. Whenever they discussed moments of protocol and tradition, George would quietly ask about the human side of these stories, a marked change from his previous focus on proper procedure. The siblings' bond strengthened in unexpected ways through their shared daily routines. The royal children's breakfast room, once a place of rigid formality, became a sanctuary where George and Charlotte developed their own secret language of support. Palace staff observed how George would position himself between his sister and visiting dignitaries during formal events, creating a protective space where she could momentarily step out of the spotlight if needed. Perhaps the most telling change came during their joint appearances at royal functions. Gone were the subtle competitions and playful pinches caught on camera. Instead, Observers noted how George had developed an almost imperceptible system of hand signals with his sister. A gentle tap on the wrist meant, "I see you struggling," while a soft brush of the elbow signaled, "It's okay to feel." Their private art teacher shared a particularly moving story about a joint painting session where George requested they work on a single canvas together, a departure from the usual separate royal portraits. The resulting artwork, kept private within family quarters, showed two young figures standing strong together, their crowns slightly tilted, their hands clasped in unity. The transformation extended beyond the palace walls. During a garden party at Windsor Castle, George broke with tradition by requesting that young guests be seated with their siblings rather than according to rank. This small but significant change reflected his growing understanding that strength could be found in family bonds rather than just royal protocol. In another unprecedented move, George began keeping a small collection of items in his coat pocket during public events: a spare handkerchief, a tiny photograph of their family's private moments, and what palace staff called his courage stone, a smooth pebble from the beach where he and Charlotte had once spent a rare carefree afternoon away from public view. These items served as tangible reminders of their shared humanity behind the royal titles. The siblings' evolving relationship caught the attention of child development experts, who noted how their public dynamic was reshaping expectations for young royals worldwide. Their former nanny revealed how George had even transformed his bedtime routine. Instead of practicing his royal wave before sleep, as tradition dictated, he would spend those quiet moments writing notes of encouragement for Charlotte to find the next morning. These messages, written in his careful schoolboy hand, often contain simple reminders: being strong means being real, and tomorrow we face it together. As the seasons changed and the initial media frenzy around Charlotte's emotional display faded, something more profound and lasting had taken root. George's own journey, from rigid adherence to protocol toward emotional authenticity, was quietly influencing a new generation of royal children. Young princes and princesses visiting from other countries began to notice how the Cambridge siblings carried themselves, poised yet genuine, royal yet refreshingly real. But perhaps what made this transformation most remarkable was how it resonated with families around the world. After all, who among us hasn't wished for a sibling who could understand our deepest struggles without words? As George and Charlotte's story continued to unfold, an even more intriguing chapter was about to begin. In the quiet months following the Wellington Arch incident, a remarkable transformation swept through the halls of Britain's royal residences. Deep within Buckingham Palace's East Wing, a dedicated team of royal advisors, child psychologists, and senior family members gathered to craft what would become known as a Children's Charter, a groundbreaking document that would reshape centuries of royal protocol. The Charter's origins trace back to a simple yet powerful moment. Princess Kate discovered a collection of handwritten notes in Queen Elizabeth's private study outlining her hopes for a gentler approach to raising young royals. These previously unseen documents revealed the late Queen's secret wish to modernize the monarch's approach to childhood, inspired by her own experiences and her observations of her great-grandchildren. The Children's Charter introduced revolutionary changes that rippled through the royal family. Through royal households across Europe, the sacred hour became a daily institution, 6 minutes when young royals could shed their formal roles completely. During this time, carefully chosen palace staff transformed the staterooms into spaces for genuine childhood exploration. Priceless antique rugs hosted teddy bear picnics, and historic portraits witnessed games of hide-and-seek. Perhaps most significantly, the Charter established the Emotional Embassy, a dedicated space within each royal residence where young members of the family could freely express their feelings without fear of public scrutiny. These rooms, designed with input from child development experts, featured journals for private thoughts, art supplies for emotional expression, and comfort corners filled with soft cushions and family photographs. The Charter's impact extended beyond palace walls. Royal schools began incorporating regular connection circles, where young princes and princesses could share their experiences with peers who understood the unique pressures of royal life. These sessions, initially met with skepticism from traditionalists, proved transformative in helping young royals develop authentic friendships and support networks. Former royal nannies revealed how the Charter revolutionized their approach to care. Instead of focusing solely on etiquette and protocol, they now received training in emotional intelligence and childhood development. The position of Royal Child Advocate was created, ensuring that every young royal had someone dedicated to protecting their emotional well-being during public appearances. The charter's influence spread to other monarchies. The Swedish royal family adopted the pressure point system, where young royals could use discreet hand signals to indicate when they needed a moment of privacy during public events. The Danish court implemented heritage hours, time specifically dedicated to helping royal children understand their legacy through play and storytelling rather than formal instruction. One of the most touching initiatives emerged from Charlotte's own experience, the Memory Box program. Each young royal now received a special container where they could store meaningful items that connected them to their private lives and loved ones. These boxes traveled with them to public events, providing comfort and grounding during challenging moments. The transformation extended to royal wardrobes as well. Gone were the days of purely restrictive formal wear for children. The Charter established guidelines for incorporating personal comfort alongside tradition. Hidden pockets were sewn into formal attire to hold small comfort objects, while traditional materials were softened and adapted for young bodies in motion. Palace photographers noticed subtle changes in how young royals carried themselves at public events. Their poses became more natural, their smiles more genuine. The Charter's most profound impact, however, came through its recognition of the unique challenges faced by royal children in the modern age. Special provisions were made for managing media exposure, protecting private moments, and ensuring that each child could develop their own identity within the framework of royal responsibility. As the principles of the Children's Charter took root, something remarkable happened. The public's connection to the royal family deepened. People around the world saw their own children's struggles and triumphs reflected in these young royals, who were now permitted to be more authentically themselves. Letters poured into the palace from parents sharing their own stories of helping children balance expectations with emotional needs. And so, as we watched this quiet revolution unfold within one of the world's oldest institutions, it became clear that the true legacy of that emotional moment at Wellington Arch wasn't just about changing rules or protocols. It was about recognizing that even in the most traditional of settings, the heart must be given room to speak. In doing so, the monarchy hadn't just preserved its future, it had made itself more relevant and relatable to future generations than ever before. As we've witnessed through this remarkable journey, a single moment of raw emotion from a young princess sparked a revolution in how we view royal childhood. From secret piano lessons to sibling bonds, from hidden journals to groundbreaking charters, the monarchy evolved in ways no one could have predicted. Perhaps there's a lesson here for all of us, that sometimes the most powerful changes begin with a single tear. Which part of Charlotte's story touched you the most? Was it the Queen's secret musical gift, George's silent support, or the revolutionary Children's Charter?